Hola, welcome to Chapter 7's Flipgrid videos. Chapter 7 is by far the most difficult, in my opinion, the most difficult and chock full of grammar chapter in the entire textbook. So please make sure that you are devoting the necessary time to learning all of this grammar that I'm going to go over here for you and also in my grammar videos. And just make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to study because it's kind of a lot of information. So we're going to start by talking about pizza verbs. And the topic for Chapter 7 is shopping. So you're going to learn vocabulary like clothing, accessories, asking for different sizes, trying on clothes, commenting on clothes. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to see in the vocab. So let's talk first about pizza verbs. If you had me as your, or me, you know, sometimes other teachers do this too. For Spanish 121, you'll maybe remember me talking about shoe verbs. And the reason I called them shoe verbs is because when we conjugated them, they took a spelling change in certain conjugations inside of the shoe, and then outside of the shoe, it did not take those spelling changes. If you remember that, the pizza verbs are named for a similar reason. So pizza verbs, I should go back. Pizza verbs are preterite tense verbs that take a spelling change when we conjugate them. So in Chapter 6, we learned about preterite tense conjugations, and we learned how to conjugate AR, ER, and IR verbs. Regular, except the stem changing verbs in the third person, singular and plural. And I said, if a verb was a stem changing verb in the present tense, it won't take a spelling change in the preterite unless it's an IR verb. That wasn't 100% true. I wasn't lying to you. I was just trying to break it up and give you piece by piece at a time. So the preterite tense has its own category of stem changing verbs or shoe verbs. In the preterite tense, I call them pizza verbs because when we conjugate this particular set of verbs, they're going to take a spelling change. And then there are a particular set of endings that these verbs take as well, called the pizza endings. So let me back up a second and review right here for you. The AR endings in the preterite tense were a, aste, o, amos, asteis, and Aaron. The ER and IR verb endings in the preterite tense were iste, io, imos, isteis, and ieron. So pizza verbs are going to take a combination of the two endings, and I'll show you those in a minute, and then we're going to apply these endings to the spelling changes in the root of these verbs. So pizza verbs can be AR, ER, or IR verbs. We have kind of a few of each, but they don't take an AR ending and they don't take an ER or IR ending. Instead, they take a combination of the two sets of endings. So I guess basically what I'm saying is pizza verbs don't behave like the AR, the ER, or the IR verbs that they are. So here are the pizza endings. We have E for yo, iste for tú, and el, ella, usted is just o. Nosotros imos, vosotros isteis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes is ieron. So the reason for the shape of the pizza here is because inside of this big triangle that kind of looks like a piece of pizza, we have ER, IR endings. Iste, imos, isteis, ieron. Outside of the pizza, we have the AR endings, A and O, but no accents. Put them together and you have this particular set of endings. E, iste, o, imos, isteis, ieron. There are no accents on any of these endings. E, iste, o, imos, isteis, and ieron are the endings that you add to the pizza verbs. So we don't add AR endings, we don't add ER, IR endings. We add this list of endings. Iste o, imos, isteis, ieron. We add these endings to these verbs. So these verbs are going to take a stem change, and then we add a, iste o, imos, isteis, ieron. These verbs right here don't take AR endings, they don't take ER, IR endings in the preterite tense. They take pizza endings. So the verb poder, to be able to, the stem changes to pud. Pude, pudiste, pudo, pudimos, pudisteis, pudieron. Poner, to put or to place, the stem changes to pus. Puse, pusiste, puso, pusimos, pusisteis, pusieron. Saber changes to sup. Supe, supiste, supo, supimos, supisteis, supieron. Querer to kiss. Quise, quisiste, quiso, quisimos, quisisteis, quisieron. Venir to vin. Vine, viniste, vino. Vinimos, vinisteis, vinieron. Do you see this? Do you see how it works? So each of these verbs, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them. First, take a spelling change in the root. So we're still going to drop the endings. Notice we have AR verbs, we have ER verbs, and we even have IR verbs. So it doesn't matter what kind of verbs these are. You kind of have to forget a little bit of what you've been learning up until this point, where the endings are based on the kind of verb that you have as AR, ER, or IR. Instead, you just have to learn that this particular set of verbs, these 10 verbs here, take a special set of endings. And again, I call them pizza endings because of the pizza shape. Inside the pizza is the IR endings, ER, IR endings. Outside the pizza shape is the AR endings. So you have to do the spelling change in their root and then add the pizza endings. This is what I meant with a lot of studying. It's just going to take time. Students always ask me, Senora, how do we know if a verb is a pizza verb? And how do we know, is there a magical way? And I know I often have little songs or rhymes or dances or whatever to help you remember just to remember things in Spanish. But for these, I don't have any magical fairy dust that I can sprinkle and say, this is the easy way to do this. I do sometimes recommend Senor Jordan's pizza verb song. I think he calls it the irregulars in the preterite tense song, but it's to the tune of La Cucaracha. And he says something in his video, which I think is pretty smart. He says, if only we could remember the yo form of all of these verbs, and then the rest of them, we could at least remember the yo form, we could remember how the stems change. So his song is something like poder es pude, poner es puse, saber supe, querer quise, or something like that. So you could check that out. There's a link to it in this chapter 7 module on my Canvas homepage. But other than that, this is just pure studying. Rote memorization. I might recommend that you make some flashcards for these 10 verbs. Okay, so that's what the pizza verbs are all about. I wish I could say I'm done, but I'm not. There are some more irregular verbs in the preterite tense that require some special attention. Remember the verbs ser and ir? They're both high frequency verbs. We use both of these verbs all of the time. Ser means to be, and ir means to go. They do not at all mean the same thing. Ser means to be, and ir means to go. The weird thing is that in the preterite tense, ser and ir share a conjugation, and the conjugation is really irregular. So the way to conjugate ser is yo fui, tú fuiste, él, ella, usted fue, nosotros fuimos, vosotros fuisteis, ellos, ellas, ustedes fueron. So that means I was, you were, he was, we were, you all were, and they were. When you conjugate ir, You also conjugated yo fui, I went, tú fuiste, you went, él, ella, usted, fue. He went, she went, you formal went. Nosotros fuimos, we went. Vosotros fuisteis, y'all went. Ellos, ellas, ustedes fueron. They went and you all went. So what I'm saying to you is yo fui means I went, and it also means I was. It means both. So how do you know which one is meant? Well, we're going to look to the context. If you said, yo fui a la tienda, I went to the store. If somebody said, yo fui un estudiante, I was a student. So the context will let you know whether it means to be or to go. But that's kind of the funky thing. Not only that, but it's really irregular. These conjugations, fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuisteis, and fueron, they don't look like ser and they don't look like ir. They just are kind of their own thing. The spellings here are pretty tricky. F-U-I, F-U-I, F-U-E. F-U-I, F-U-I, F-U-E. Okay, this is probably one of the most commonly misspelled words, probably in Spanish, even by native speakers, but definitely by my students. So fui, fuiste, fue. Fuimos, fuisteis, fueron. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to think of a recent shopping trip you took. Vamos a hablar de una excursión de compras. You're going to tell me about your recent shopping trip. You're going to answer these questions. ¿A dónde fuiste a comprar? ¿A dónde fuiste? Where did you go? Fui a, and then you say the name of the store. Fui a Target. ¿Qué compraste y para quién? What did you buy and for who? So the verb here is comprar. It's a regular, not a pizza verb. So yo compré, whatever you bought, and then for who it was. Para whoever. Yo compré una chaqueta para mi hijo. ¿Pudiste comprar whatever you bought con descuento? So I put X in parentheses because I don't know what you bought. You still have to tell me that. Whatever it is that you bought, could you buy it on sale? Con descuento, with a discount? So this is a yes or no question. Either you could or maybe you didn't. So let's say you bought whatever you did with on sale. Sí, pude comprar whatever it was, la chaqueta con descuento. Or maybe you couldn't. No, no pude comprar la chaqueta con descuento. Okay, yes or no? Pude comprar, I could buy. Poder, to be able to. Pude or no pude. ¿Qué más hiciste? This is the verb hacer. Hacer means to make or to do. ¿Qué más hiciste is asking, what else did you do? What else did you do on this shopping trip? So you went to whatever store, you bought whatever it was, you could buy it on sale or you couldn't. And then tell me something else you did. Pay attention, please. You may not, probably will not use the verb hacer in your answer. Hacer means to make or to do. But what else might you have done while you were shopping? Well, let's see. Maybe you fui al cine. Maybe you went to the movies. Yo visité un amigo. Maybe you visited a friend. Comí en un restaurante. You ate in a restaurant. You tomé un café. You drank a coffee. Notice how in all of these examples, none of them use the verb hacer. So you probably will not need the verb hacer in your answer unless you made something or you did something. Like you make your bed, you do your homework, but probably neither of those you did on your shopping trip, okay? So that's probably the biggest mistake I hear in this question, is that my students are so used to taking the verb from the question and inserting it into the answer, and you probably don't need to do that with this one. ¿Qué más hiciste? What else did you do? I went to the movies, I had a coffee, I ate in a restaurant, I visited a friend, okay? So tell me what else you did on your shopping trip. 4 simple questions. But I did try to use as many of those pizza verbs, or some of those pizza verbs, as I could think of. All right, pizza verbs, probably the biggest part of chapter 7. The next thing that we're going to talk about in chapter 7 are the direct object pronouns. So I go a little bit out of order in chapter 7. Usually I follow right along with the textbook, but I found over my years of teaching this class that it kind of makes sense to talk about direct object pronouns before the stressed possessives, which come up next in the chapter. So let's talk about direct objects and direct object pronouns. It's got a kind of an intimidating name. You might not even know what a direct object is or a direct object pronoun. But the good news is this is really, really, really simple. A direct object is the thing, the what, in a sentence that receives the action of the verb. So the first thing I need to do is teach you how to locate the direct object. So if you have a sentence, so all you have to do to locate the direct object is ask yourself, the what, the huh, the what. So if you have a sentence like, I buy a sweater. A what? What are you buying? A sweater. Sweater is the direct object. She likes pizza. She likes what? Pizza. What does she like? She likes pizza. Pizza is the direct object. I have a car. A what? A car. You have what? A car. Car is the direct object. So it's really, really easy to locate the direct object. What we're going to do is we're going to replace the direct object with a pronoun. Pronouns stand for nouns. They take the place of nouns. So instead of saying sweater, pizza, or car, I buy it, she likes it, I have it. It would be the direct object pronoun. It's replacing the noun. Most of the time, direct objects are things. It's either an it or a them. Sometimes the direct object can be a person, though not very often. So when you replace a direct object with a pronoun, these are the choices that you have of the pronoun to use. For me, it's me, and for tu, it's te, although I said that's not very common. For it or him, it's lo. For it or her, it's la. So if the thing is masculine, use lo. If the thing is feminine, use la. For us, use nos. For all you in Spain, use os. And then for them, use los or las if the them is masculine or feminine. It's easier to show you than to keep trying to explain it. So we're going to replace the direct object, the what, with a pronoun in Spanish. So we have a sentence like this. Maria compra la blusa. She buys what? Hopefully you can figure out that la blusa is the direct object. And we're going to replace la blusa because it's feminine and singular with la. Maria la compra. That means Maria buys it. Yo veo a Katrina. I see what or who? I see who? Who do I see? Katrina. Katrina is the direct object. So we're going to replace Katrina with la. I see her. Yo la veo. I see her. Pedro tiene 3 libros. He has what? What does he have? 3 libros. We're going to replace the libros with los, them. Pedro los tiene. Pedro has them. Okay? So we're replacing the direct object, the what, with a pronoun. Mete lo, nos, os, or los, or las. Okay, so here's how Oh, one more thing. Where do they go in the sentence? You may have noticed that they go before the verb. Maria la compra. Maria buys it. Yo la veo. I see her. Él los tiene. He has them. Unlike English, where it goes after the verb. So it goes before the conjugated verb. You can put the direct object pronoun after an unconjugated verb in a compound verb phrase. So when there's two verbs next to each other, we conjugate the first verb, we leave the second verb unconjugated, and you can tack on the direct object pronoun to the end of the unconjugated second verb. There has to be two verbs in order to do this. So instead of saying Maria la compra, Maria va a comprarla. She is going to buy it. Instead of saying I see her, yo la veo, yo voy a verla. I am going to see her. Me gusta, that's a conjugated verb, comerla. I like to eat it. I like to eat what? I like to eat the pizza. Es bueno escucharla. It's important, it's good to listen to it. So es bueno is conjugated, es. Escuchar is left unconjugated, and we can tack the la, standing for music, onto the end of the unconjugated verb. For the scope of this course, I'm happy if you can just do the single verb phrases with the direct object pronoun before the verb. So if your head is spinning, like if you feel totally confused, it's okay. It's pretty common to have my students feel like that at this point. But I promise that by the end of these questions, this will be a piece of cake, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to answer each of these questions, replacing the direct object with a pronoun. All of these are single verb phrases. There's only one verb here. So you're going to put the direct object pronoun before the conjugated verb. Let me show you how easy. Compras los pantalones. So you buy the pants, you buy the what? First, figure out what's the direct object. Los pantalones. You buy the pants, you're going to replace los pantalones with los, them. So do you buy the pants? Sí. Los compro. I buy them. Bebes el café? The what is el café? You would replace it with lo, it. Do you drink coffee? Sí. Lo bebo. Notice in the answers, I'm putting the verb in the yo form because the question is, do you do this? The answer is I do it, or I, whatever. Escribes la carta. The what? La carta. We'd replace la carta with la. Sí. La escribo. I write it. ¿Escuchas la música? The what? La música. You would replace it with la. Sí, la escucho. Okay, I'm going to leave the rest for you to do. Follow that same pattern. First, figure out the what, and then replace that what with the appropriate pronoun. The lo, la, los, or las. And then put that pronoun right before the verb in your answer. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions. And that wraps up the first half of Chapter 7 Language Lab for Flipgrid. Happy flipping. Adios.